Welcome back. Now, yes, I've got a lot of seeds going, and it's way too early for all of those seeds because any good gardener will have already put out a video saying, don't sow your seeds yet, don't sow your seeds yet, don't sow things early, you will regret it. But let me tell you about why I do, because I do. I've gotten into hydroponics this year because I want the mental health boost. That's hard to say. I've gotten into hydroponics this year because I want the mental health boost of growing things in the winter. But also, there's just something about dirt. There's something about dirt that's just good for the soul. So yeah, sometimes I start things that may or may not survive until they get into the ground because I need to. So this is not something you do with the last of your seed. Like, save that seed is precious. But if you've got seed to spare, and if you have room in your growing space to pot things up, then, things that don't mind being transplanted, you can start them early. I filmed a garden tour on February 28th. It is now March 2nd. And since the garden tour that I filmed, tomatoes have true leaves and some peppers have popped up, and bean on my hydro garden is just about ready to pluck, and things are just growing so fast, and you'll love to see it. Garlic under this pile of snow. And we'll put the broccoli under this pile of snow as well. We have golden raspberries. You can see them peeking out of this pile of snow. And this trellis will probably get squashed. We have walking onions under this pile of snow. And under this pile of snow, into the shadow now, and strawberries under this pile of snow. We've got more strawberries under this pile of snow. And then we're going to have lots of peppers and tomatoes over here. And probably some zucchini, maybe some squash, and lots of cabbage. And then on the other side of the sidewalk, we are under the neighbor's tree more, so that'll be mostly kale. And we have some asparagus under this pile of snow. We've got blackberries, thornless blackberries under that pile of snow. We've got grapes under this arch. And then along the side of the house, raspberries, and then we've got these shelves that'll be lots and lots of grapes. We don't get very much sun in the backyard, and unfortunately, eventually, this big, beautiful ash tree is gonna have to come down because even though we are getting it inoculated, it is eventually going to lose the fight against the emerald ash borer, and that will be very sad because it provides so much shade. It will mean that this whole area can become growing space, which is pretty exciting. But for now, we've got mushrooms back there, which haven't really given us anything. So I'm hoping that if we at least get irrigation to that, we can maybe get some. And then we've got service berries. And then this line here is all black cap raspberries. So we got lots of raspberries here. I'm trying to keep them in check. We've got a little garden bed there. That's my daughter's, and she gets to plant whatever she wants to. And then under this pile of snow is another garden bed. So this does pretty well with like chard and kale, but there's not a lot of snow, not a lot of sun here, so we don't get very much. But peas have been really happy on that little trellis on the child's garden. And then I have some hardy kiwi over there. And then we've got chickens. I didn't realize that I had the overhead light on a low setting, so these got a little leggy. But that's okay, so when I pop them up, I'll pop them deep. So I have spoon tomatoes and the Isis candy tomato. It's such a sweet tomato. And then one little Mila pear tomato. And then a bunch of mortgage lifters. So, and then here we have albino pepper, which honestly I have one growing in the hydro garden, so I really just want to taste it. So if that doesn't work, it doesn't work. But yeah, I think these are all gonna, as long as these all thrive, I think that's more than enough tomatoes for me. So I don't think I really need more than one Mila. I'm just trying it. So we'll pop them up soon. Well, not that soon, but. The Arrow Garden is doing great. I think I'm going to grab a little bit of lettuce. Grab a little lettuce for breakfast. One of the salad seed pods didn't really make it, so I have some perpetual spinach in here, which I'm excited about because I don't really like the taste of lettuce so much. It tastes a little bit better in the hydro garden, but still is not as good as spinach. Up here in the Mars Hydro, it's really starting to happen here. We've got, I'll take a little more green onion for my breakfast. Oh, my hands are too full. This was a mistake. We've got a little pepper here. We have some cilantro. The tomatoes are starting to put on their flowers. So I've got a fan on them, so the fan should be enough. But you can go through and just give it a little, a little tickle. And that, for tomatoes, is enough. For peppers, you need to use a little brush. But yeah, because the beans set flowers, and I didn't even touch them. Look at that, baby beans. So we'll be putting some beans in our salad pretty soon, which is exciting. And oh no, this tape is not holding up very well on these little signs. I just love how it's really starting to fill in. And my little woodland forest is becoming much more mysterious and magical. Yeah, we have the original perpetual spinach down here, which honestly, I didn't think was gonna do okay. Because, like, can you see, let's see, can I get to it? Yeah. It's just the roots, something funny is going on. It doesn't seem right, but it is still living, and we've got another perpetual spinach chard there, so we should have plenty even without that. Do I want to steal a little, I may think I will. Put a little cilantro in my breakfast. Yum. So things are growing at the end of February. Very exciting.
The reason why I start my tomatoes way too early is because if I start my tomatoes at the time they're supposed to start and get them into the ground, tomatoes and peppers are the last things to go in because they really love those warm overnight temps. On the years when I've started my tomatoes at the right time or even purchased tomato seedlings, I don't get a lot of tomatoes. As far as like the big tomatoes, it's almost not even worth growing them here because my garden is shaded, my season is short. So in the past, I have gotten like one tomato in August or September that ripened in time, obviously. And so that's not enough tomatoes. Like, that's way too much work for one tomato. But if I start growing my tomatoes too early, I like to get them in by February. Not in. I like to get them started in February. If I get my tomatoes started in February, then by the time they go in, they are big, unwieldy beasts. And honestly, those last few weeks when they're in and out of the greenhouse, like in the house when it's too cold at night, in the greenhouse during the day, and they're huge and they've got the stake and they're hard to transplant. It's a lot of work to move them around, but it's worth it. And the other thing, if you do start your tomatoes way too early, you need to have a good plan for potting them up. I've heard people complaining that if they start their tomatoes too early, then they get transplant shock when they plant them. They get transplant shock when they plant them in the ground. And I've not had that problem. And I think that's because when I'm gonna show you my secret weapon. All right. These are my secret weapons for growing really big tomatoes and getting them to thrive once they get into the garden. So we go through a lot of plant milks in our house. I prefer coconut milk. The rest of my family drinks oat milk. But these, once they are done, I rinse them and cut off the top. And then I cut most of the bottom out. I'll leave a little bit of the edges so it has some structural integrity. But I just use these and I fill them up with soil. And then because they're kind of waxy, they don't fall apart right away. I don't like to plant in toilet paper or newspaper because I don't have good luck with it. They always get moldy. The paper dries out my seedlings too fast. Or if I get them really wet, then it just falls apart too quickly. So I don't like using paper or like those coconut core pots because they don't work for me. For me, they do not work, but these guys work because they repel the moisture. They're sadly, they're already waste. We use them. There's not a lot of other lives that they can go on to. So it's another way to give it another life before it goes away. But yeah, by the time it's time to put the plants into the ground, then if these will either just rip apart pretty easily or just cut them and then they just go in the ground. So normally I grow with soil blocks, and this is just kind of like a wrapped up soil block because you don't have to. There's not a lot of finagling. It's just releasing it and sticking it in the ground. Because my garden doesn't get much sun, and because my season is so short, and because tomatoes are so good, I start my tomatoes. Such a noisy chair. My other chair is ugly and stinky, and this chair is noisy. So that's why I start my tomatoes way too early. Now the other stuff, yeah, you can yell at me about that. I started Gomphrena and Status and straw flowers way too early because when I went to start my tomato seeds, I realized that I have no idea where my soil blocker went. So I'm like, oh no. Well, I'd been really wanting a mini soil blocker anyway. So then I found a kit online that came with the mini and the bigger guy, and I had to try it out. And I realized once I had, put down some of the mini soil blocks that I can't fill that with tomatoes because that's way too many tomatoes, but also I don't have a good way of marking. I don't need 24. Is that how many it was? Yeah, I don't need 20 tomato plants of each variety. That's way too much. And I don't know how to say this row is cherry tomatoes, this row's I don't know how to keep them organized. So I decided just to do this flowers because I can use a whole block of them. So yes, I planted the flowers too early and they're probably not gonna make it, and that's okay because I will start more at the appropriate time if I need to, and that's okay. And then some herbs I started just because, again, I sent my partner to the store to get some 6-inch pots, and he came back with 3-inch pots, but like, okay, let's make it work. So yeah, some of the plants that I started because I just wanted to start plants, and it made me feel good to start them. And I know that the consequences of starting them too early is that I may not have as much space as I would like to have in my growing area, but mostly that they just might not make it. But the other thing that I didn't even film it, but there's nothing really to see. The other thing that I did is when I started all of those inside plants, I also did some brassicas. So like kale, cabbage. I think I even started broccoli. Did I do lettuce? I don't know. I need to stop trying to grow lettuce because I'm a chard girl now. I used to hate chard, and now I'm like, you know what? Chard tastes the way I want lettuce to taste, and it grows better, so I'm a chard girl. Hey, I work chard for my body. Money, that's what the way the song, this is not, well, I don't work hard for my money because I don't make money, but I do work hard for my body because muscles. I really need to stop rambling. So I did begin some cold weather crops, and I stuck them outside in my little greenhouse with the propagation domes on them. Winter sowing, people who are like me and they just need to plant things way too early, they like to say, oh, you should do winter sowing. Winter sowing is the best, but winter sowing for me never works. I have very mixed success with it. Typically, if it works, I have a hard time getting them out of the container and they don't make it. I don't know. And then last year I tried with a bunch of flowers, and I think had I put the propagation dome over them in the greenhouse, they may have fared better. I was trying to replicate the year that I did actually really well winter sowing kale, and I think I had a dome over it in the greenhouse. So I think we'll see. We'll see if the stuff that I put in the greenhouse works. But it's that time of year to start sowing those seeds inside as well. So we're gonna see what works. This is gonna be the inside kale or the outside kale that's going to do really well in the garden. Just as long as we have kale, just as long as we have cabbage, I don't mind. The experimenting is the fun part. Okay. Well, we got some more winter here. So much snow. So much snow. I know a lot of people live places where it's already, I get so jealous whenever I see people who live in totally different climates to me, and they're like, oh, look at all these spring flowers popping up, and like, ooh, I have that same flower and I don't see it until like April or May. But hey, we've got snow. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. And